hope you had a really good night last night and you enjoyed your time. Not too much fun that you're awake today, but I know Brock also had an amazing night welcoming here on the island of Ibiza. My name is Megan NILSSON. I go by Crypto Megan, and we've got a very, very special guest today. Lots in store for this amazing session to start the day off with some inspiration, some big ideas, and to get an idea of where we're headed in this magical world that we've been building and watching flourish now as we come into the institutional phase of adoption. And it's truly, truly incredible. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome our esteemed guest today, Brock Pierce, founder of DNA House and founder of Tether. So co-founder of Tether. So he's so much more than that. He's a pioneer, he's a visionary, and he's been around since the very beginning. In fact, we've had incredible conversations backstage just about the magic of Ibiza itself, which we'll go over today as we get this session started off with high energy, high vibrations, and an all-time high in life. I know you guys experienced maybe some of the vodka last night.
I was going to say high vibrations and good libations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the co-founder of ATH Vodka and also have my own podcast, which we'll be doing together later too, called the Crypto Megan Podcast. So yeah, love to start this session off. We'll be discussing all things adoption and where we're headed. But first, Brock, I'd just love to get a background on how you started and what your start in this world, because you started back in the internet days.
I took a pill and a beef. Well, I got my start in tech because I'm, from the kind of first generation of, kids that had computers and the internet. I'm a 1980 baby, and so the 90s were my teenage years. And I grew up starring in movies. And so I grew up acting, and by the time I was 15, I realized that I really wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to be a creator. I wanted to be a builder. And so I made a decision to give up my acting life and to go pursue a entrepreneurial path in tech. My agent and manager and all the Hollywood folks thought I was nuts. I mean, they're like, what university did you graduate from? What possibly makes you think you could do this? And so at 16, I started my first company. In 1997, we were the first major company doing streaming video.
Wow.
And so we created the concept of webisodes and all your formats today, kind of the precursor to Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube. This is 1997. So we had 30 original programs going because, broadcast television, cable, the internet in theory had unlimited channels, and so we could serve every underserved audience. But the internet didn't roll out, broadband didn't roll out at the rate that everybody had forecast. And so we went belly up like almost everyone in the spring of 2000. When Internet 1.0 imploded. I actually was living in Spain, and I then kind of left this reality, and I went and lived in virtual reality, and I ended up running all of the markets for game currencies, for World of Warcraft and Second Life and all of these things, and so I built up a team of about 400,000 people, principally in China, that would mine digital currencies. And so I was instrumental in launching Alipay. I was PayPal's largest merchant for a number of years. Had 97% market share in South Korea, which was the mecca of gaming markets. And we were running social experiments in economic theory. And we were tenuring professors because we were able to experiment with ideas that you couldn't really do in the analog world, because the consequence of messing up an economy, was, significant, but we could do that in a gaming environment within a virtual world. And so I spent about 10 years in that realm before moving into the one that I think we're talking about with Bitcoin and now all of the things.
Yeah, wow, what an incredible trajectory. I mean, you've been so early to so many things. You seem to have a knack for understanding the need for something before anybody else even understands it exists or what it is. I mean, you're ultra mega early. So it's been interesting then that you've been able to watch the birth of this movement happen from its inception pretty much to now. And I think it'd be interesting to get some insights on that evolution of things, where you think we're at now. Like, are we at maybe the time where MySpace was invented and the internet? Like, where do you think we are now in this movement, this digital currency movement?
Well, I mean, I think this year, not even this year, the last month and a half, I'd say March 7th is likely the second most important date in this industry's development. January 3rd, 2009 being the most important, which would have been the day of Bitcoin's launch. I think that March 7th is likely the second most important date. As you talk about adoption, that is the date where President Donald Trump, our first crypto president of the United States, held the White House summit, and where the United States of America created a strategic Bitcoin reserve. It's also when the banking industry of the United States of America was told we have to bank this industry. For those of us that have been in this business, we were debanked.
Oh, yeah.
We were persecuted and cut out of the financial system, not me personally, but most of us, because of our desire to innovate and create financial inclusion and build better, more fair systems. But that's the seminal moment where we've gone from being in the fringe.
I was just going to say it, yeah.
Being in the fringes, a big fringe, but being in the fringes and persecuted for our desires to build a better system and a better world.
Right.
To the day where we're no longer being persecuted, we're being sought.
Yes, absolutely.
We're being welcomed. We're being enticed into building, and so I think that's really it's a game-changing moment as we think about adoption, right? Because there's consumer adoption, and that's taken a while because we had to build systems that were user-friendly, safe and secure, and I think we've gotten there. Then you eventually, you had the academic adoption, the venture adoption, big tech adoption, the financial systems adoption, which we've gone through all of those. But the final moment is government adoption, right? Where government and regulation is no longer attacking you, but inviting you, welcoming you, working with you. And I think what the United States does matters most. And so I can tell you, as someone that has gone around the world, dealing with world leaders, dealing with the world's governments, the main thing, aside from President Bukele and perhaps what you've seen in the UAE and Estonia, there's been a handful of governments around the world that were early adopters and leaning into this. But the main question I would get from presidents and governments was, well, what's the U.S. going to do?
Right.
And everyone's really been waiting to see what the U.S.'s perspective was going to be. And I can tell you, just in the last month and a half, every government is like, what do we do? How do we go faster? Right. And so I think you're going to see like dominoes around the world, instead of an industry where people are uncomfortable innovating, concerned what might happen to them, we have permission. Like, not that you needed permission to do it, but I can tell you life is a lot better when you have permission.
Oh, yeah.
And where you can sleep comfortably at night, going that for trying to build a better world, you don't have to worry about losing your bank accounts, having your doors kicked in, getting arrested, potentially imprisoned for building something that ultimately makes the world better. And so, hallelujah.
Yeah, wow. I mean, so much is unpacked here, but yeah, like we've gone from unbanked and being on the fringes and kind of looked down upon in the industry to Bitcoin's adolescence phase, so to speak, when Michael Saylor started to step up and start to buy Bitcoin, advocate for Bitcoin. President Bukele started to buy it as a country, and everybody kind of looked at him like, man, what is going on here? What is he doing? These trailblazers are so inspiring. I mean, actually, I wore blue today as, this sense of bold, risk-taking, energetic energy that I feel in the movement right now. You're also wearing a very, very vibrant color. And I think that it's just symbolic of our time. So many of you in the audience have been building things, have been trying to make an impact on this space, and it's been so difficult. Now we've got the blessing of the authority, more or less. And I like what you said about the US kind of making that ripple effect across the world. I had Anthony Scaramucci on my podcast not too long ago, and he said, never bet against the US. And this was a time when Gary Gensler had his kind of like tyrannic reign. And he said it's a bold, risk-taking culture, and eventually it will come around. And I think that's what sets things apart, is when innovation is allowed to thrive and flourish. When the Clinton administration was back when the internet started, he allowed it to thrive, to rip, essentially, without trying to get ahead of it and regulate it in a way that stifled innovation. And as a result, we had Uber, Google, Amazon born in the US, and it created this sort of incredible culture of innovation. And I think that's where we're at right now, on the precipice of that. All the most important things, companies, concepts, ideas being born that we can now build without having to fumble around in the dark, right? So it's truly an incredible era as we come into that. To quote Binance yesterday, I had a podcast with Rachel, the CMO of Binance. They've now got 250 million plus users, and we've got 650 million plus users around the world. I mean, that's incredible, right? From where you started.
We've come a long way.
Yeah. So what are you looking at right now, particularly that excites you in this movement? What are some of the things that you're working on?
Well, I mean, as Bitcoin, think of it as a digital gold, right? That's where it is in its development and the impact it's having on the world. But I think it's worth talking about the many other use cases of this technology. Web 3, which simply put is, right, we talked about Web 1, right? Web 2, is generally you would think of as big tech today. Web 3 is really the demonopolization of Web 2, where you, as a user of that infrastructure, become an economic participant. Like when people talk about universal basic income, where is it going to come from, right? Think historically about the most valuable things in the world. At one point it was gold, then it became black gold or oil, right? What is the most precious commodity in the world today? Your data. Data.
Yeah.
Data has become the most precious commodity in the world, and it's your data. And trillions of dollars of wealth has been created using your data, but all you've gotten from it is access.
Right.
As we think about data and you beginning to own your data, as we think about concepts of self-sovereignty and identity, but it's ultimately in the participation or the remuneration of the monetization of your data. And that's really what the core of Web 3 is, right? The core of Web 3 is people owning their data, having rights to their data, and having economic participation in their data where they are using products with informed consent.
Right.
Versus blind submission.
Man.
And so these ideas we've talked about, for now about a decade, and really we've been building, these systems for coming up on a decade as well. But we're really on the precipice of where the products, right, are scalable and usable.
Right.
And so I'm excited about Web 3 as we think about the internet and its, call it next evolution. I'm very, very excited about the prospects there, as we think about beyond just digital gold, as we think about these new systems. Obviously, artificial intelligence and where you need, the space on chain, right, for AI to be able to transact, right? It's this system, this infrastructure is critical to how our future, can function with everything that's happening with AI. Also, incredibly interesting. Even the little things. I love what's going on with meme coins as we think about politics.
Right. Yeah, I know that's
right?
been a bit of a controversial subject, but what is your viewpoint on that? And the president getting involved and the evolution of meme coins in this cycle.
Well, I'd like to, I think, giving Elon Musk some credit for his recognition of memes, right? What did he say? He who controls the memes controls the universe, right? The memes must flow. There's always this the revolution won't be televised. It will be memed. And if you can't beat them, meme them. But what are memes, right? Mimetic language. It is the way that society, like culturally, or what we would, we think about culture or media, it's become a way that we express, our feelings, right? And it's a way that we can show our support for concepts. It's a way that we, can protest. And so memes have become a huge, influence in how culture expresses how we express ourselves. And so I think that's pretty exciting. I think that, all of it is, and it's fun. We'll be announcing shortly, for those that have played with like pump.fun, we'll be announcing shortly and releasing a white paper on what we're doing for music. We're here at Ibiza, which is a cultural, spiritual, and musical capital, but the equivalent of pump.fun for music.
Very cool.
Where you can show your support of things, instead of just like, what's the next meme like that's going to like actually break through. I think that sound is another interesting one. I'll be actually talking tonight at the gala with my good friend Rick Latona. I don't know if he's here in the audience, but you'll hear from him today on some of the AI side of things.
Yeah, so you think that obviously memes are still going to have their place throughout the evolution of this, because I know a lot of people have had different views and maybe they've been burned and they think that, it's going away, but it is an inherent part of this culture. And when you put culture on the blockchain, really, when you get people to connect through culture, you hit the jackpot, right?
Yeah, so. and try not to think of these things as financial investments, right? That you can make money with them, but it's more an ability to express oneself. I'm also still a big believer in NFTs, though I've never been a big fan of the acronym. Though we did buy NFT.com, and out of my house, I think we launched the first 2 NFT platforms. But conceptually, the idea of chain of custody, right, and digital scarcity is there. I think that the NFT market would probably already have been back if the meme market hadn't basically sucked all the oxygen out of the room.
Right.
And the meme market did, because so many of the things being done around NFTs, that was happening when there was still all of this regulatory uncertainty.
Yeah.
And so memes became the most pure version of something that you can't really regulate.
Right.
And now that we have regulatory clarity, I think that that market will come back. But like all of these markets, they get burned. Back to like Internet 1.0, the dot-com boom of 1999. We go through these things, and just because the market had got burned due to a gold rush, doesn't mean that there's not inherent, fundamental, utility and change coming from it.
Absolutely.
But the market needs time to recover.
Yeah.
It has to heal from its wounds. But it doesn't mean that there's not inherent truth and value in the idea that there's a creator economy and that digital scarcity is unlocking value for artists all around the world that hadn't otherwise had an ability to participate because people didn't value digital art because it didn't have a blockchain that, where we could ascribe value to it. So I fundamentally still very much believe in that, and I probably should go, start looking at, what is, the truly interesting NFTs and art, and start, building out that portfolio again, because I think it will come back.
Absolutely. And there's so many amazing things arising. I mean, you also said that tokenization is inevitable. And now we're seeing, just to reference the title of this topic, it's from awareness to, as a buzzword, to behavior. And essentially, I believe that this technology is just going to be embedded in our everyday lives. NFTs will govern the entire way we do things, potentially. AI will be in everything. In fact, it's the convergence of those powerful technologies, to reference Kathy Wood in our ARK Invest Big Ideas report, that's going to maybe potentially create the biggest wealth generation in history due to the productivity, the different ways in which we're doing things, and bringing together these technologies. Last time this happened was 125 years ago. I think it was the telephone, electric, and combustible engine. and that sent GDP soaring by about 5%, I think it was around there, five times what it did over that. So we're right now in the beginning of that huge boom. How do you see, where we're at now going forward? What do you focus on? Because I know something that's really important to you is making a big impact on this space. Being the co-founder of Tether, I mean, you've had the vision for things well before others have. So what is your sort of vision or your big aspiration right now?
Well, it's continually, taking a look at the world. I don't see the world for what it is. I see the world for what it can be, right? And I want to make sure that my time and presence here in body, is leaving as big a positive impact on the world as I can.
Right.
And so, we are living in a moment in time. You've never had capabilities like you have today. Your ability to create or support things that can change the world has never been like it is in this present moment. And if there's never been a moment like the one we're in right now where your ability to assist in creating positive change for the future has never been like it is now. This is not a moment to be sitting on the sidelines. This is not a moment to be a spectator. Right. The future is going to happen to you, or it's going to happen with you. And this is your moment to be a part of the change, to be a contributor to changing the world for our collective future, for the generations to come. And never have you been empowered like you are in this moment. If you don't know what you're doing and why you're here yet, this is certainly a time and actually an interesting island and place to do it, to reflect and say, how am I going to be involved? How am I going to contribute? Because this is your moment to be a participant.
Absolutely, an active participant. The technology is ready. It's now time to go implement it, to experiment, to build things that can be embedded into our everyday lives that will make our lives better. And there's no better person to see that vision than you, Brock. So what are you working on right now actively that you can share with us?
Well, I'm working on kind of everything at once. There's a handful of things. Craig Sellers and I have worked together a long time. Craig was CTO of Mastercoin, which became Omni. We were the first ICO back in 2013, one of the 3 layer 2s on Bitcoin. And Craig also co-founded Tether with me along with Phil Potter. We have a new project called Self, which is coming out right now. Self-sovereign identity. When you start thinking about financial system, fundamentally a layer below that is identity. And excited about how we think of identity and attestation and participation and how that affects the world in which we live. I think it's a holy grail-like opportunity. As I said, I'm very interested in where we're going with Web3 and how that changes our participation and how we interact with the web. Very interested in healthcare. I've gotten into buying hospitals and nursing homes and health insurance and health tech. But until we had the regulatory environment, until now, we couldn't actually really apply these technologies into our systems of health, because we have a sick care system. How do we actually build a health care system? I'm interested in space. I'm a participant in the space economy, and obviously we'll talk a little bit. You'll hear from Rick Latona later, and I guess I'm doing another conversation with him tonight on AI principally.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence. Wow.
Yeah, wow. Talk about powerful technology.
Wow.
That's why,
I mean, it's like I made music. I just flew in from Egypt, and I made, with an AI platform we've created for Sound of Meme, I made, in a matter of 15 minutes, songs to represent our entire, like theme songs from a trip. I mean, if you're not playing with these tools, it's unbelievable what you can do individually in a short period of time.
Oh, absolutely. And I like what we discussed about, engagement and people using the technology. I know a lot of you guys have probably tried it, but as I said earlier, I'm the co-founder of ATH Vodka. It stands for All Time High, and it's a new way, it's a consumable-backed product in which we can change the way people engage with products, with, loyalty and points programs, and it's really, really cool. So do come up to us later. We're going to be hosting another event later today, and we're just here to have a good time, and I'll explain more about that later, but it's a very, very cool technology and new way of using things. So, it's in Costco, and Costco has always been like on the cutting edge of things, right? So it's exciting to see these kind of products start to make a bigger scale and a bigger penetration into our daily lives, and I believe we'll see much more of this going forward in many different sectors. It just becomes something, that we use without even realizing it, so.
Well, yeah. Megan, I look forward to some toasts.
Yeah, absolutely.
To all-time highs, and your vodka was very good.
All right, I love it.
So to this evening,
yeah.
And to Ibiza, I've been building and living here for about 10 years. So I'm always happy to be home.
Yes, yeah. Brock was giving us some very interesting background on this island, and man, there is an energy here. So it's really cool that we've all been able to come here together to have these powerful discussions and to get excited for the future. And I find you very inspiring. So it's great that you were able to give that energy to the audience today. People building that need a little bit of a push. I know it's been a long road, but we're right there. So never give up. Right? Keep building.
By the way, a bunch of magical things we could have gone just down this path of things that we launched from here.
Yeah.
My partner Stephen Morris and I hosted the Polkadot launch from here.
Wow.
But a lot of things have been launched on this island, and people just don't know the stories.
Oh, there you go. We've got lots of stories for you, so we'll have time to talk about that all throughout the day. We really appreciate you being here, Brock, and thank you for such an amazing talk.
Well, thank you,
Megan.
and
right.
Thank you to Carlos and all the organizers
Yes.
for bringing all of you together.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.